prêt, on est prêt. C'est extrêmement professionnel.
Hello and welcome to the third edition of HealthTech for Patients, organised by HealthTech for Care and coming live from Paris. Wherever you are located around the world, thank you for joining us today. My name is Alison Munro and it's a great pleasure to be hosting this unique event. We are delighted to say that we have over 380 people online this afternoon from more than 20 countries around the world, from Europe, Switzerland, Israel, the US, the UK, and South Korea. And we have a rich program. We have a distinguished panel of European experts and key players from right across the health ecosystem to take part in two engaging and exciting roundtables where everybody's voice is heard. To open this afternoon, it is my pleasure to hand over to the driving force behind HealthTech for Patients and the president of HealthTech for Care, Marie-Yvonne Hyans.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this third edition of HealthTech Innovation for Patients. It really is a great honor for me to welcome you to this event organized by HealthTech for Care. HealthTech for Care is a non-profit organization dedicated to patients. So the main objective of HealthTech for Care is to put the patient into the center of initiative to better respond to their needs. So, in this context, the ambition of HealthTech for Care is to inform the global ecosystem of new methods and innovative technology as biotechnology, as medtech, digital tech, to improve patient access to care and to develop faster solutions with patients. Today, the first roundtable, we share information on non-communicable diseases which kill about 41 million each year. This equivalent of 74% of all deaths. Then we will focus on cardiovascular diseases which kill about 18 million deaths annually. So now I am very pleased to welcome speakers, clinicians, physicians, patient association, entrepreneur, and we will debate on concrete solutions for these diseases. So I wish you a very nice and fruitful afternoon. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon. And now I am handing over to Anaïs, just here.
Thank you very much, Marie-Yvonne, and thank you to you and to the whole organization for putting up together this amazing program. It's the second year I'm here, and I think this year the subject was or is non-communicable disease. Maybe not the trendiest one, maybe not the one you first see on the news, but actually the one that we are all most likely are going to end up being a patient of. So I think it's very important that we have those two round tables. As you said, the first one will be more on, let's say, prevention treatment at large in NCDs. And the second one that I'm very lucky to moderate is more on cardiac disease. So we'll have very concrete experience of companies and patients and so on. So the key here for me is what you have just said in the numbers. It's huge, the impact that non-communicable diseases have, but because sometimes it is more chronic, it is not as big as, for example, others disease can be, it doesn't take so much the news. But it's very important we all discuss about it. It's very important we all think how to improve it, how technology can be actually a part of the answer, not obviously just not the answer, and I'm not gonna get into ChatGPT right now in the introduction, but in any case, I think it's gonna be a very fun afternoon with very concrete experience, and again, for me to participate here is very nice. We have HTID in October, and this, let's say, spin-off of this big event, the HealthTech for Patients, really shows how much you care about patient, and not just to put on paper, but that you're serious about it, and that I think we all should be. So I think that's pretty much it on my end. Again, thank you for the organization to be here, and very happy to make this introduction of the two panels. Again, you will hear a lot of different stories and hope very interestingly. So I will pass it now to actually the core, the patient organization. I think we have Anka Thomas online that can say hello and tell us a little bit more what EPF does and why they are here.
Good afternoon. I hope my voice carries to the room. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Anka Toma. I'm the Executive Director of the European Patients Forum, which is the umbrella organization of umbrella organizations of patients in Europe. We represent about 80 coalitions of patient organizations working either at the national level on across diseases, or at European levels focusing on specific conditions. The reason I am here, well, first because I was invited. Thank you for the invitation. The reason I am here is really to spread the word about the work that is done by patient organizations, umbrella like ours, but also local patient organizations, national patient organizations, in bringing the voice of patients, of citizens, really, because all patients are citizens, and it's a very important thing to say. Into health policy and health practice. Now, involving patients is something that brings benefits to the development of solutions for patients. It also brings benefits to the delivery of healthcare, and it brings benefits to the society as a whole. So this is not just about healthcare for patients, it's about healthcare with patients. Actually, the motto of the European Patients Forum is nothing for patients without patients. And the reason that involving patients through their organizations is so crucial is because our community brings a unique perspective, the lived perspective of a community living with a condition, or of a community that brings people from all walks of life, working, living, functioning with a range of conditions. And these are unique challenges that we face. These are unique perspectives that we bring. And bringing that in the discussion makes for development of solutions that respond to real needs of patients. It helps the development stay on track to solve the actual needs. But it also facilitates the regulatory outcomes. It facilitates the access of products to patients, of solutions to patients, of innovation to patients, of practices to patients, and the access of patients to these. So I'm very happy to be here and introduce this meeting. There will be some very interesting conversations later on. I'm very happy and proud to be here and to bring the message that it is important to recognize patients and their organizations in healthcare practice, in healthcare policy. We are here as a patient organization. Our members are here as patient organizations to bring a unifying, hopefully unifying, we do our best, view of as broad a community as we can to policies and to practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Vonne, Anaïs and Anka. Thank you so much. And here at HealthTech for Patients, we are very keen to hear your thoughts and, of course, to receive your questions. Please ask your questions in the, on the platform, in the questions section, and these questions will be transferred to our moderators, and they will be answered and discussed by our speakers at the end of each roundtable this afternoon. And hashtag HTFP3 is where you can join the debate and give us your thoughts, your takes on the event. We will also be sending out a survey after each session, after each roundtable. Again, we are inviting you to answer. We are very keen to take your thoughts on the event. And afterwards, probably tomorrow, the replay will be up on YouTube. So we are now going to take a short break before we open this afternoon with our first roundtable. So see you then. You are watching HealthTech for Patients. To open our first roundtable, we have our distinguished panel of speakers ready and on stage. Please remember to ask your questions on the platform, which will then be transferred to the panel for discussion later on. So, to open and to moderate this first roundtable, it is my pleasure to welcome Alain Herrera. Alain, over to you.
Thank you very much, Alison. It's really a pleasure to be here. And good afternoon to most of you, and perhaps also good morning to some of you. As highlighted by Marie-Vonne, non-communicable disease has a high burden in the health ecosystem. The non-communicable diseases, they kill 41 million people each year, the equivalent to 74% of the global death. In this context, how can we act together to improve prevention and optimize the patient journey? This objective can not be achieved if we do not all work together. Institutional actors, medical doctors, health professionals in general, investors, and above all, patients and patient representatives. This is why we have gathered these different stakeholders around the table this afternoon. I'm very happy to moderate this roundtable, which is devoted to such an important topic and which brings such key players. So we will first have the opportunity to listen from Mr. John Ryan. John is the Acting Deputy General Director and Director of Public Health, Health and Food Safety Directorate General at the European Commission. Unfortunately, John could not be physically with us, but he recorded his message, and after we will ask our panelists to react before moving to the various presentation and the general discussion. Our first speaker will be Mia Bajramagic, patient living with type 1 diabetes. She's a physician, and she's project coordinator at the International Diabetes Federation Europe, IDFE. As project coordinator with IDFE, she works in patient-oriented and clinical-based EU-funded projects like Trials at Home, ISLET, and many others. She will be followed by Dr. Linas Dabashinkash. Linas is the Global Medical Director for Hypertension and Dyslipidemia at Global Medical and Patient Affairs at Servier. He has over 20 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. He has seen a significant shift towards a greater patient focus, particularly in the field of cardiometabolic diseases. And at Servier, he is committed to driving therapeutic progress in this area, which, as we already said, continue to be a major cause of morbidity and mortality worldwide. Then we will have Christina Nicolescu, Life Science Investment Specialist at the European Investment Bank, the EIB. Christina is working in EHB as a life science specialist, and she is part of the Life Science and Health Division of the Project Directorate. But before, she worked in the biotech field. Between 2009 and 2016, she worked at Transgene in France. Transgene is a biopharmaceutical company belonging to the Institut Mérieux, and Christina was developing immunotherapeutic products in oncology and in infectious diseases. So now, the presentation being done, we will listen to John Ryan. Thank you.
Kind invitation to join your meeting today on non-communicable diseases from prevention to treatment. I wanted to speak about three topics today. First of all, the general approach of the European Commission to non-communicable diseases prevention and treatment. Secondly, to speak to you about the European Cancer Plan. And thirdly, to mention to you about the forthcoming initiative on mental health. So the Commission, having reflected with the member states and with stakeholder organizations, proposed an approach to non-communicable diseases, which emphasizes the importance of the international framework, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the World Health Organization disease-specific targets. And based on that, and based on the fact that non-communicable diseases represent 80% of the disease burden in Europe, the Commission proposed an approach which would entail priority setting of our work on non-communicable diseases every year with the member states. Every year, on the basis of a commonly agreed document, Commission asks the member states to choose which are the areas of work in non-communicable diseases that they would wish to prioritize for the following year, N+1. And on that basis, the Commission organizes a call for best practices. These best practices are evaluated and published on a portal. And then for the topics which the member states have prioritized, could be cardiovascular, it could be diabetes, it could be nutrition, it could be physical activity. The Commission will then propose the relevant best practice initiatives which would address those particular diseases. If 14, 15, 20, 27 member states decide to pick up one of these priority topics and to support the best practice initiative, the financing will be made available by the EU for Health programme. EU for Health programme is the financial instrument which we use to support public health initiatives in the European Union. This is a process that's been developed on the basis of a common document over a number of years. It's been rolled out with the member states. The most recent development is the support which we give to non-governmental organizations, patient groups, health professionals, in order to enable them to accompany the member states in implementing these best practices. So on the one hand, you have a annual selection of priorities. You have the selection of best practices intended to address those priority areas. You have member states voluntarily participating. And finally, you have support given to NGOs and health professionals to accompany the whole process. This process takes account of the fact that many non-communicable diseases have common elements. The determinants may be similar or the same. Therefore, it makes sense to have an approach where different health determinants can be taken on board when addressing the problem. We regularly discuss all of this with member states and with our stakeholder community, and the process is kept under constant revision. Second area of work which I wanted to mention to you concerns the Europe Beating Cancer Plan. When President von der Leyen took over as President of the Commission, she chose the topic of cancer as being a flagship topic for her Commission. We developed a Europe Beating Cancer Plan, which does not only restrict itself to health, but also looks at the other policy levers at the European Union level, which might be relevant to the cancer file. And therefore, we have a health in all policies approach, which is divided into prevention, early detection, treatment and care, and finally survivorship and patient quality of life. And on the basis of this plan, a number of actions have been identified, and we're now in the process of implementing those actions. For example, in the area of the right to be forgotten for cancer patients, so that they can benefit from their financial rights and not be stigmatized or discriminated against because of the fact that they had a cancer diagnosis earlier in life. We have also revised the scientific guidelines on screening, and these are now being implemented in the member states. And on the prevention side, there are actions in the areas of alcohol, tobacco, nutrition, and so on, physical activity as well. So this action plan is interesting to the extent that it includes things like taxation for alcohol and tobacco, but also improving the quality and access to radionuclear medicine, the avoidance of carcinogenic substances in the workplace, and a number of other policy initiatives which go beyond the traditional health portfolio. And we organize regularly meetings in order to present the state of play and the work that's going on. To mention that this European Cancer Plan is steered in close contact with the health ministries of the member states, but also with stakeholders and associating the research authorities, because the cancer plan and the research on cancer are closely linked for the purposes of the cancer plan, which, by the way, has a budget of 4 billion euros over a period of 7 years. Third point I wanted to mention to you concerns the mental health initiative, which is planned by the Commission for June of this year. Now, since COVID has taken place, we've noticed a sharp upturn in the number of people seeking assistance for mental health issues. And we've also seen a lot of pressure on people because of lockdowns, because of school closures, because of isolation, and because of the general stress of the COVID situation, which has made many people feel less strong in the sense of mental health resilience. Therefore, the President of the Commission decided last November that we should have a new action plan on mental health, which is in the process of being finalized at the moment and will be produced in June of this year. And it will also take a similar approach to the cancer plan by having chapters on prevention, on treatment and access to treatment in particular, but also on quality of life and on the rights of people with mental health, particularly in the areas of discrimination and stigma. So you can see that given the heavy burden of non-communicable diseases in Europe, the Commission has been anxious to promote dynamic, innovative approaches to dealing with prevention and treatment of non-communicable diseases. We have put in place a number of policy approaches, both for non-communicable diseases in general, but also for specific conditions like cancer and mental health. And I do look forward to the discussion with the other colleagues who are online and in the different roundtables in order to see what ideas you're coming up with, which could perhaps then contribute to this whole process. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you today, and have a successful meeting.
Well, so turning to you, how do you react to this declaration? Christina, I would like to start with you because I would like to know how the EIB is using this recommendation and how do you translate this recommendation into your investment strategy?
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for inviting the European Investment Bank, so myself, to this very important meeting. I would like to say that I'm here to, of course, explain what the European Investment Bank is doing in the life science and health sector and non-communicable diseases more specifically. But I would like also to stress that I'm also here to hear more from patients and other organizations, pharma and beyond, to hear how we can do even more patient-centric approaches in our investment. So I'm here also to learn and to spread the word, if I can say, in our investment strategies to even go deeper in a more patient-centric approaches in our investment. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to learn as well. So coming back to your question, European Investment Bank is the bank of the European Union, and I think that is the largest multilateral development bank in the world. We invest in Europe as a major focus, but we also have European Investment Bank Global because we want to reach people beyond the European borders. So European Investment Bank is supporting projects that promote the European Union policy projects. So we implement and invest in projects that make the European Union stronger. We have policies and we have investment areas. And of course, we align with the European Commission strategy, policies in our investment. So we follow and we implement in our plans the policies that Mr. John Ryan just presented. So of course, innovation, digitalization, health are the cornerstone of the European Investment Bank policies and investment priorities. And what we like to stress that being in Europe or beyond Europe, all these projects, especially in health and life science, should have, let's say, three major components: should be safe, should be effective, should be accessible, and healthcare should be universal for all. So we stress a lot the sustainable development goals put in place by the World Health Organization and to reach this universal health coverage. Coming back to the three specific areas that Mr. John Ryan presented, first of all, we would like to have the same, let's say, systematic approach in our investments to cover both health, so hospitals, so primary health care, but also private innovative companies bringing innovative solutions, and we will discuss later, across all these areas, from prevention, being vaccines against, let's say, pathogen with let's say, cancerogenic potential, being early detection, so we have very good pipeline into this area, treatment and follow-up. And so we mirror, if you would like to, if I can say, the investment policy and the investment, in our investment policies and in our investment practices, the European Commission, let's say, strategies and priorities, being in cancer, being in mental health, and other non-communicable diseases as well.
Thank you. Mia, as a patient, what we heard is what you expect from the European instances.
So thank you so much, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to HealthTech for Care for organizing this event. It's such an important topic. So as Alan mentioned, I'm the project coordinator at IDF Europe. I'm also a person living with type 1 diabetes, so I know both sides of the industry, both as a healthcare professional and as a patient. So I think what Ryan mentioned is implementing the cancer policy on the European level at the EU Parliament, now coming up to the mental health policy in June. And also we implemented a new diabetes resolution just this past November. This is all a starting point to, I would say, a new era for patients, where the patients are at the center of the conversation. They are not somewhere behind the scenes. Maybe you can get a glimpse of them. The patients are the center of the conversation, but working along with the industry, working along with the healthcare professionals is honestly, it's the best recipe for success, because for many years and decades, we have had gaps in the treatments and outcomes of patient, let's say, even quality of life and both their long-term health. So yeah, I'm excited to see the new era of what is going to come up next.
And you, Linas, as are you integrating this in your, what you call your patient offers strategy?
Yeah, so thank you, Alan. I think that now in pharmaceutical industry, we see huge change towards more patient centricity, towards involvement of patients from the beginning of research and development until the later stages. So all these initiatives, I think, are very important to find common ground and to work, to better collaborate together in order to find better solutions for patients. And later I will speak about prevention. So this is one of the area where we can improve significantly. Yeah.
Thank you. So we can move now to the presentation. We'll start with you, Mia.
Sure. So thank you. So Alan has already introduced me, so I will not waste everybody's time with that. But to give you a little bit of a backstory, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes almost 10 years now. When I think back, I had like phases in my, let's say, life with diabetes. I was diagnosed, and then I was motivated to get my health in check, and then at some point I got tired of it because it was every day, all day, and then there was no community because it was the era before technology and before sensors. So you couldn't basically see in the crowd if somebody also had diabetes. You could only know if you knew the person or if somebody else knew it. And then we got the technology, and then we came with this revolution of checking blood sugars through CGMs or flash glucose monitors, and then you had a sense of community. Even though you never spoke to the person, you could get a glimpse of somebody in the crowd wearing a sensor and say, oh, they can understand my situation, but we don't know each other. And then fast forward, I went to medical school because I was very motivated to kind of bring to the table both experiences of a healthcare professional and a patient. And then after that, I joined IDF Europe as a project coordinator, being based, basically, my role is clinical-based and patient-oriented EU-funded projects, along with other obligations, but we do projects like Trials at Home and ILET, where Trials at Home is something that it's a project looking at decentralized clinical trials and getting that logistical background good enough so that the outcome of the trial is the same as a traditional clinical trial would be. ILET is a gene therapy kind of trial. And then as from the point of non-communicable diseases, the burden becomes long-term. So any long-term illness, now medicine is evolving so quickly. We have new treatment options, basically. We can say from today to tomorrow, we could have a new treatment option. But we're getting all of these treatment options available, but yet the health outcomes are not getting better statistically. There's no linear improvement in health outcomes. The number one mortality rate of, let's say, non-communicable pandemic diseases is heart disease, and diabetes falls right after that in the top 3. So it's the silent killer, and we have new treatment options, but we have relatively the same outcomes as, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago. And we know that from studies and from talking to patients and from doing these analysis of so much data, that we can almost certainly say that this is the burden, the long-term burden is the effect of the let's say, health outcomes that we were hoping for but didn't get. So we need to put an emphasis on mental health. We need to put an emphasis on early detection and diagnosis and prevention, because we have the tools for that. These options for early detections are very cheap, very accessible to the population and to every household, but we don't have the daily routine of using them. And this can save many, many lives and the overall health benefit. So the burnout, the early treatment, and the early diagnosis are all conversations that should be at the center of the table, rather than the system shouldn't be reactive. It should be, the system shouldn't be reactive, it should be proactive. And that's what we're seeing at the EU Parliament levels, what we're seeing at regional levels, what we're seeing at the industry. It takes a village to conquer this topic, and I'm very excited that the patients are actually at the center of the conversation, like I said, and not it has to be a team effort. That's the main topic. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will turn now to the pharma representative.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So just to follow what Mia was saying, you know, I'm medical doctor by background, but quite early I joined pharmaceutical company. So 20 years now I'm working in pharmaceutical company and mainly with cardiometabolic diseases. So I was able to follow what's happened in this area. And my understanding is there is improvement, but it is very difficult to improve situation with prevention further. Because if you want to improve it further, so we need to collaborate much better with patients, with healthcare professionals, even with institutions, all together. So let me give one example of hypertension, because we all agree that if we want to reduce morbidity and mortality from cardiovascular diseases, we need to focus on early prevention and specifically treat hypertension, dyslipidemia, which are two main risk factors for cardiovascular diseases earlier. But what is situation? Hypertension is #1 risk factor widely, worldwide. Why? Because more than 1 billion of people around the world have raised blood pressure. Second thing is that if you look to the slope in the curve on the right side, you could see that in last 30 years, number of people with hypertension doubled, and mainly in low and middle income countries. And this is due to aging of population, due to growth of population, due to lifestyle changes towards Western lifestyle and diet. And sometimes hypertension is seen like a disease of 3 paradoxes, because it seems it's very easy to detect hypertension because you just measure blood pressure. It's very easy to treat because we have treatments, and it's easy to control. But look at this graph. You can see that in red color that about 50% of people with raised blood pressure don't know that they have blood pressure. Then only 40% of people are treated and only 20% of people are controlled, well controlled. So how to improve management of hypertension? One of ways is, of course, we need to improve awareness and diagnosis. And I need to mention a few initiatives. So if you know, last week there was, on the 17th of May, there was World Hypertension Day. And the International Society of Hypertension launched a huge campaign, awareness and screening campaign, Main Measurement Month, enabling patients in many countries to measure blood pressure free of charge, of course. So this initiative in last years was implemented in 50 countries and screened about 5 million people. So huge initiative. Another initiative is from Servier, because they say so campaign, which is awareness campaign in social networks. Last year, it reached about 90 million of people worldwide in 50 countries. So huge initiatives. But if we have objective that every adult should know their blood pressure, it's not enough. It needs to be much more systematic approach from the early ages to reach younger people, to detect people who have highest risk much earlier. Second, if we speak about treatment of hypertension, it's very interesting because we have very effective treatments. If you do randomized control trials with treatments of hypertension, so about 90% of patients will be with controlled blood pressure. What is issue? Then you saw that in real world, it's just 20% of people who reach blood pressure control. And actually, these are real life barriers because not all patients have access to the treatments. Not all doctors use available treatments in their practice. And also, a huge issue is lack of treatment adherence. In hypertension, about 50% of patients have difficulties to adhere to treatment. And it's normal because treatments are effective, but they need to be taken every day through your life. So this is a real difficulty. And now that's why real effectiveness of therapies is much lower than it was shown in randomized controlled trials. And our objective in the industry is how we can improve this effectiveness, that would patients would have all benefit or majority of benefit which is possible. And this focus on treatment adherence now it's more and more recognized also by institutions. Here you see quotations from World Health Organization, from politicians. But in pharmaceutical industry, of course, we focus mainly on issues with treatment. So we are working on with a single pill combination approach, which is an approach when you put few molecules together in one pill, allowing to use lower dosages. That's why it's better tolerated by patients. This treatment simplification leads to better treatment adherence, and we are doing a lot of real-world studies showing that this innovative approach leads to better treatment adherence, and better adherence leads to less cardiovascular events and less healthcare cost. So this concept, although it is recognized in hypertension guidelines and recommended, still it's not implemented in real practice. And beyond that, there are some difficulties to register new single pill combinations, and that's why it would be also good to discuss about that. It's not enough to focus only on treatments, so that's why we work with our partners, developers of some beyond the pill solutions like digital applications, and one of example is Elfi. So it is a free of charge application which uses gamification method to motivate patient to follow treatment, to register blood pressure levels, and then to share with doctor and to discuss with doctor how to what improvements should be made. And of course, the last thing from our side, we invest significantly in medical and patient education. We think that this is crucial, and we are open to different initiatives. But if we speak about treatment adherence, so it's very complex. It's not just about the treatments, because factors really are not just related to therapy, but also related to patient behavior, to patient understanding of disease. Factors are related to healthcare, what is connection between patients and doctors. And of course, also we speak about silent diseases, so it doesn't help. So in order to have more stronger approach and really to find solutions which could improve treatment adherence and then effectiveness of therapies in real life, we need to collaborate together. And just one initiative, what we are implementing, we have project which is Alliance for Better Adherence. So we initiated this project together with European Society of Hypertension and 2 patient associations, so Global Heart Hub and SIA. Idea was to sit around the one table and to discuss what should be done in order to have more systematic approach, allowing to improve treatment adherence and effectiveness. So I think that, like I said before, there is no choice, because how we can find better solutions to fulfill patients' needs without closer work with patients, and then implementation of these solutions will be through patient-doctor connection, so therapeutic alliance between patients and doctors.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
And now we will have the third
Yes,
presentation. Christina, what can a bank can bring in this environment?
Money.
Of course.
So investment, and I think that is the role of the European Investment Bank. And I think that first of all, what the European Investment Bank is doing to invest in these innovative solutions, as you mentioned, the therapies speaking about therapies can come from one day to the other. So to invest in this ecosystem of early startup biotechs, medtech, which are, let's say, breaking the circle for those patients and bring those innovative solutions. And we are, say, at the bank, trying to support and to understand for companies bringing these innovative solutions, that these are not only treatment, as you say, that is one shot and the disease will disappear, but we try to work with all those companies, biotech, medtech, which are really understanding also the, let's say, the burden of this long-term treatments, and that they understand exhaustively the needs of the patient, and that they can bring solution for all this, let's say, complex disease management that is not only maybe disease treatment, but how that can adhere to treatment. We have long-term, we have long-lasting injectables for one company. We have other approaches. So as we said, we try to have this 360 approach, and to work with those companies where we really think that they understand the patient in the full complexity of the disease. And this is at the core of our investment. And as we said, we invest in Europe, and we invest in different stages of development of the companies. We can support from preclinical to late stage clinical development and pre-commercial activities. All these innovators in Europe. And this is what the bank is currently doing. But again, so we want to see business models which are really fitting the really needs of those patients, that they are working together in the definition of their business plans and the business models. Very brief, but
thank you.
What are we doing?
Brief, but very interesting. Thank you very much. So now we will move to the general discussion. And the title of our roundtable is supposed to cover prevention to treatment. So we'll start with the prevention. And in terms of prevention, it's a little bit surprising to hear from a pharma representative that you are involved in prevention, because by essence, you are and you have as a vocation putting new drugs available for treating better the patient. But what does it mean, prevention, for a pharma company?
Yes, thank you, Alan. I think it's important to understand that everything should be together. So when we speak about prevention and why it would be important to detect patients earlier, because at that stage we would have less damage done by blood pressure or by lipids, and maybe at that stage we don't need treatment. Lifestyle changes, diet changes would be enough. Then if it's not enough, treating these two major risk factors like blood pressure and dyslipidemia allows to avoid majority of cardiovascular diseases in the future. So this is real prevention. I can give you an example of a few years ago, there was one publication from investigators in the United Kingdom. They published analysis, genetic analysis, showing that people who have lower blood pressure and lipids throughout their life, they have 70% less risk of cardiovascular death, 80% risk of cardiovascular events. So, which is unbelievable, and it means that basically these diseases could be prevented, but focus should be on earlier prevention and on risk factors modification.
So in fact, it's treating to prevent.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. It's and from a patient standpoint, what do you think is important in order to really convince people to think about prevention and to consider their future life in view of, unfortunately, being sick one day?
Yeah, so thank you, Alan. So I'm gonna continue the conversation from, I'm going to continue conversation in that direction because, so at IDF Europe, we're an umbrella organization of 73 association members across 46 countries Europe-wide, so not just the EU member states, but Europe-wide. And we see it even regionally, that prevention campaigns, we do them every year for World Diabetes Day, we do them at the Parliament, we do them, each association member does it locally, at their cities, at their regions, at their countries, and yet still we have the problem of people not being diagnosed as at the early stage of disease. Rather than, there was actually dozens of studies that were published across the last decade where we know that from a diabetes point of view, specifically type 2 diabetes, which the major risk factors are hypertension and dyslipidemia and lifestyle, we know that there is a genetic component to the disease. So eating a cookie will not give you diabetes, but you need to be aware of your genetic makeup in order to be prepared for when the day comes and you're at that age range that you need to be regularly checked, and doing your yearly checkup is the best thing you can do for your long-term health. We know from studies where there was a study, the most recent one was where they stated that about 70% of patients with type 2 diabetes, on the day of their diagnosis, they're diagnosed with diabetes because of the complication, not because of any other symptom related to diabetes. They come from for the complication, tingling in their feet or their hands, really high blood pressure that was catched at a, like, you were not looking for it, it was accidental. And then the GP or the physician does the blood work, and then the high glucose comes up positive. So yeah, it has to be prevention rather than action, because the long-term damage that is being done at the moment is major.
Yeah, as you say, long-term damage is really the main issue. Christina, the EIB is investing in a prevention project. You mentioned vaccine, but it's not only vaccine.
No, it's not only vaccines. We try to go beyond this part. So we also noticed that during COVID pandemic, so this is also a waking call for us. The COVID pandemic shaped the health systems in Europe and globally, and hence we noticed that there was a spike in the number of patients with numerous comorbidities, like even malaria, tuberculosis in some countries, and also cancer and non-communicable diseases and mental health. So in the terms of prevention, we think also that strengthening the health system in the countries which experienced the, let's say, the lowest level of preparedness is a way to help and to contribute financially or with technical assistance to strengthen the local health system, the primary health systems in those countries, to bring them to the, let's say, a common level, and hence to help them to screen patients, to know the patients, to prepare in a case of such an event. So yes, the EIB in terms of prevention is also EIB in strengthening the health systems in Europe and beyond. And we have several projects that we can speak about, but this is the, let's say, the fundamental core in our approach in terms of prevention is strengthening the health systems.
So it's an important factor for you
Yes.
to decide to invest and
Yes,
to select the project you will support.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so let's move to the treatment now. And in terms of treatment, I will be again asking you, Christina, when you decide to invest in a project, I suppose like all other investors, you are performing due diligence.
Yes.
What are the elements on which you are paying the most attention? Do you have, there are very classical parameters you need to check, but specifically in this context, are there some parameters which are really of paramount importance for you?
Of course, we have to have projects, as we said, which are in line with the European Commission and European, let's say, policies and strategies. And we heard that non-communicable diseases, cancer and mental diseases are key priorities. So this is of uttermost importance to us. In terms of projects that have the capacities to receive or to be bankable from EIB perspective, of course, we look very carefully and at the, let's say, to have a strong technical background to answer very clear identifiable unmet medical need that is confirmed by the patients and patients associations which are supporting this project. So we have to understand that this project will be, let's say, helping or supporting the real needs of those patients. We also look, of course, at hence the market. The market is really identified and is again substantiated by the number of patients, and we look at the stage of development, the clinical data that has been accumulated so far. We look at the, let's say, social and also ecological footprint of the company, that how engaged is with other, let's say, stakeholders in the process. So these are, let's say, for my perspective, key elements in going forward with an investment proposal from a European Investment Bank perspective. So this is key to us. As we said, we have prevention, we have treatment, we have follow-up companies that are helping to understand the outcome of a treatment. So we cover all this broad range of approaches in our investment. So yeah.
Okay, Linas, you mentioned a few minutes ago the fact that one of the main issues you are facing is the adherence or the compliance of the patient to treatment. And we can easily understand the need of patient involvement in the life cycle management of drug to optimize the disease treatment. But are you also involving patient in early stages, in early clinical development, and do you discuss with the patient the best way? Where are the most important unmet medical needs, for instance?
Yes, so I think that in Servier, but probably beyond Servier, in other pharmaceutical companies, there is major change in last years. In last 5 years in Servier, specific department, patient affairs department, was created, and it's part of medical and patient affairs, like you mentioned. So what it gives, it allows patient affairs to be at the forefront of all engagements with patients, and to coordinate all activities in the company, that they would be involving patients, that they would address real patients' needs, that we would act in compliant way, and so on. So I think huge change was made, and like you said, this allows to involve patient affairs from the beginning of research and development until implementation strategies, what is treatment adherence and solutions, how to improve treatment adherence. I think now it's a must at all these stages include patients or patient advocacy groups in order to be able to propose advanced, much better and adaptable solutions which could make real impact. So I think there is major change happening.
And from the patient standpoint, I remember 25 years ago, I was working in the oncology division of Sanofi. And we started building contact with patient and patient association. And patients were quite reluctant to speak with pharma companies because of the bad image, but not only. Do you think this has changed, and how, from a patient standpoint, you see the different stakeholders, the investors, the pharma companies?
Yes, definitely. So there was a different way of approaching things many, many years ago, and the patients were always in the background. And I think that left a bad taste in many of people's opinions, but the industry is changing, I think, in a positive way. We are all humans. We learn throughout our lifespans and we grow. So there's a new era, a new need, and everything is kind of aligning in that direction. But I can vouch from the diabetes community. So even though we talk about diabetes as a general disease, depending on what type you have, it's different populations, it's different, I would say, characters within. So if you talk to the type 1 diabetes advocates, they're very vocal, but then again, this is the younger generation. The issue comes with the type 2 diabetes patient advocates. We have them, but they're very precious because there's not many of them, and we need to encourage them to, because there's a stigma, and the stigma is always the main issue why I would say patients are resilient to speaking to pharma, to policymakers, or it comes from an attitude, what could my opinion matter and what could my opinion change? But the thing is, every single opinion adds up to a big picture. So every single patient adds up to a bigger story. You might feel alone as a patient, and you might not see with your own eyes that there are people going through the same thing as you, but it adds up. So the community is strong, and it's getting stronger, and things are going in that direction. I can give you a hardcore example for one of my projects that I was part of. The pharma logistical team wanted to make the protocol for the patient test group that they would test their blood sugars 4 times a day as a type 2 patient on basal insulin. Most patients that are on basal insulin that are type 2 usually check their sugars once in 3 months when they get their A1C checked. And the logistical team was eager to have this protocol in place. And then you had the patient advisory panel say, which was filled with type 2, real live type 2 patients that live with the type 2 diabetes diagnosis for 20 to 30 years, most of them, said, I don't have the daily routine to test my sugar, so don't expect it from other patients like myself. And they changed the protocol. They had better success rates, better outcomes, because they had that patient voice tell them this is not sustainable for the real patient, real life patient in their daily routine. So that's just one simple example.
Christina, you want to
Just
add something?
I think that it's important that the patient associations are working with private players, pharmaceutical industry. It's also important on the other side with institutional regulatory agencies, being European or American, that the patients are involved in all the, let's say, being clinical trial design, in setting of the primary or secondary endpoints, so, and the taking the secondary, and on the other side with a regulatory agency that they help them to align the development of the pharmaceutical and biotech industry with approval processes, with criteria for approving or delaying the approval of a product. So the patients are important on the both sides of the story to understand the development and the approval of prevention, diagnosis, or a treatment, not only on one side, but on the both sides of the story.
Yeah.
And on investors as well as a third component.
There is, before moving to the question from the auditors, there is something I would like to bring on the table. What do you think is really the most cumbersome for patient having to take treatment every day to check blood pressure or glucose, even if it's not very invasive? And I remember through my practice of hemato-oncologist, sometime when we were moving patient from treatment each 3 to 4 weeks to daily oral treatment, we were thinking patient will be happy. And very often, they were not very happy. Because when you have one-day treatment each month, even if you are suffering from some acute side effect, after a few days, it's gone. When you are taking, and I remember specifically when we were treating cancer patient with interferon, for instance, patients were taking the treatment every day, and every day they were tired, and they were every day having not very severe side effect, but they were having side effect every day, all days, during weeks, months, years. What do you think is really possible to do in order for patients to live better on a day-to-day life?
This is a really, really great question. I would say that basically from the point that medicine became a science, we have always addressed the physiological response of the body, but now the topic of conversation is mental health and how mental health actually impacts the physiological side of the body. And that there's actually studies, I read some of them like a couple of years back, but I remember they were talking, if a patient goes into the operating room and they heard bad news prior to their operation, their outcome from the operation is significantly decreased because their mental status was disrupted before the operation took place. Nothing changed in the protocol of the operation, nothing changed in the medication. There was no concrete answer in terms of this patient got sicker during the operation. It was just their mental status was different prior to them entering the operation. And this goes along with long-term chronic diseases. We have the medication. We have very effective tools to treating everyday diseases. But then we get the response that the patient's health declines because the patient gets overwhelmed with the daily routine of taking their medication. Doesn't matter at which way it is prescribed, morning, day, midday, or whatever. And hospitals and healthcare systems are not built for the mental health aspect of treatment. They're built to treat the body as a whole and not the mental health. And I can vouch even for myself or from my association members, people that I spoke to. It's not the problem of checking your sugar, checking your blood pressure. It takes like a minute of your time at most. But it's the constant reminder of, oh, you need to do it, and this is never going to end kind of thing. And you need to address it, and everybody should be addressing their mental health, and it has to be a two-way street.
Linas?
Yes, if I can add from hypertension. I think one of the major opportunities in hypertension is to involve stronger patients from the beginning and of diagnosis of hypertension and in the follow-up of hypertension. Unfortunately, sometimes doctors don't have enough time to explain why it is important, why this is a silent disease, so why it is important to take treatments regularly. I think that there is huge opportunity to involve patients in the management of disease much stronger. And second thing, I think it's also opportunity to strengthen therapeutic alliance between patients and doctors.
Mm.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. There has to be a healthy ecosystem between the healthcare professional and the patient. There has to be a healthy conversation, and the mental health aspect has to be addressed from day one of diagnosis, not later on when the patient is already overwhelmed, already fed up with everything, and is at let's say a standpoint. It has to be part of their treatment plan, basically.
From pharmaceutical companies, it's also interesting because usually we were very keen to understand disease, but now we need to switch also to behavioral science to understand what motivates patients, what leads to major barriers in real life and so on. So this is different competence. So I think we need to improve in our understanding of daily life of patients also.
No, I fully agree, and patients and patients' family as an entire friends, families, all surroundings in the schools, all this system, as we said, there's the strength in this health system at each country is important because it's one patient, but so many people taking care or suffering or being supportive is also important to understand in all the system.
So we move to the question from the audience. So I have a first question. How can we find out when the new plan for mental health has been finalized and becomes public?
Well, I think that it will be an official statement on the site of the European Commission and European Parliament, and on peculiar basis, if we can communicate also personally to the auditor when this is coming, but should be an official announcement as is a priority. So June something was said.
And I have a second question. What are the views of most patient organizations on the issue of clinical trials? And it's a question directed to a patient organization, but I think not only. But Mia, if you want to start.
Sure. So we, as an umbrella organization of patient and healthcare professional association members, we have a whole department dedicated to clinical trials and, let's say, patient projects and EU-funded projects. It is important that patient organizations are involved in clinical projects because that is a direct opportunity for a patient to speak their mind and to give a voice to the patient. And we are really at IDF Europe trying to emphasize, and we're always pushing at every opportunity we get, that the patient advisory committee or the patient expert panel or whatever name that the project coordinators give it, that they're present from day one of the project or the clinical trial. Because there's no point of a patient being there when the data is presented already and analyzed. The patient has to be beforehand, and that's what makes an impact.
Yeah. Linas, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think it just allows to have much better result at the end, much broader insights from different perspectives at the end, which is useful. So.
And another question, improvement means reduction in patient-related outcomes or improvement in adherence to diet and lifestyle and medicine. Any suggestion on how we can improve?
Absolutely. So this is a crucial point, because what we speak about the treatments and lack of adherence to the treatments, it's the same question about lifestyle and about diet. So like I said, you know, in hypertension, treatment adherence, I remember one article was called as Holy Grail of hypertension. How to find real effective solutions. And it's the same for lifestyle and for diet changes. So we need to work together to find the best approach which could be effective in real life.
I'm just gonna wanted to ask a thought process. When you think about a treatment, let's say I usually think of a treatment as a cup. You have a cup where you drink your coffee, and you have a broken cup, like with where the seals are broken, but it's like intact. You can pour the best coffee in that cup, and if it leaks, that coffee is eventually gonna spill out. And that goes for treatment options and technology and advances in medicine. You can have the best treatment option, but when we talk about lifestyle, the stigma is people always think, oh, I need to, let's say, I don't need to eat sweets, or that's the only lifestyle change that I need to make. No, lifestyle means that you get enough sleep, that your stress levels are under control, that you have a healthy relationship with your job, with the way your day is structured. So you have a morning, you have the midday, and you have the evening. You have family time, you have friends time, you have exercise, and you have healthy food coming. Doesn't matter if you cook it or you have other ways of getting it, but lifestyle is a whole. It's not just one thing. So I like this. That's how my mental picture is of treatment.
Okay, I think we have some time, but not too much, before ending this roundtable. So I would like to ask you to deliver very briefly one message, one recommendation. How would you like to end this roundtable? We will start with Christina and we will end with Mia.
So I would like to tell to all the auditorium what I say also to my colleagues, the investor officers. So yeah, please speed up with the process. Do not forget that at the end of this development is a patient waiting for a treatment, for a diagnosis, for a novel model to live his or her life. So this is how I say it to my colleagues, that at the end of the project is a patient.
Thank you, Christina. Linas?
Like I said in my presentation, I think that if we really want to advance in the improvement of management of risk factors, we need to address real-life barriers. And for that, we need to collaborate better together and to find solutions which would really work in real life.
Thank you. Mia?
My statement would be to tie everything together in this conversation is that it takes a village to conquer the long-term disease situation and topic and non-communicable diseases. And so everybody needs to do their part, the patient as well. And yeah, that's my message.
Thank you. So I think we are at the end, and I would like really to thank you very much, because I think this type of exchanges is very fruitful. And I hope we will have other opportunities to discuss on this topic. Thank you very much to
Thank
all
you.
of
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Mia, Linas, and Christina for the quality of this impassioned and uplifting conversation. And let's keep this very important conversation going at hashtag HTFP3. We will be sending out a survey following this first roundtable. And now we are going to take a 14-minute break, which we will start again at 2:40 with our second roundtable with our new panel of speakers. So stay with us. See you then. Welcome back to HealthTech for Patients, edition number 3. We're getting lots of very strong and exciting feedback. Please keep sharing your ideas and giving us your take on the event through the chat and, of course, through the survey. We now have our second distinguished panel of speakers ready to open our roundtable on cardiac diseases. And please remember, if you want to ask questions, and we're sure you want to ask questions, please do so, and the questions will be transferred to the panel, and they will be answering and discussing your ideas at the end of this roundtable. It's my pleasure now to hand over to our moderator, to Anaïs Lecorvec. Anaïs.
Thank you very much, Alison. So very happy to be here to moderate this panel. Just for those who don't know me, I'm Anaïs Lecorvec, so I manage a wonderful association of cluster in life science, so really in touch with companies, research and innovation across Europe. It's called CEBR, and I also have my own company in social innovation, where we actually measure the impact and the social impact generated in many applications related to health. So I'm really happy to be here. I have an amazing panel with me, so I promise I will not talk long. And what we've asked the panelists is to present what they do. So we're talking about cardiac diseases and really how to enhance the care of patients. So each will have 5-6 minutes. I will be a little harsh on the time, but that means that way we can really have a nice discussion afterwards. So with no further ado, I will start to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Jean-Philippe Verroy. He's the Chief Department of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery at University Hospital Rennes 1. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I would like first to thank our president, Marie-Vonne Niance, for the invitation to share with you the specificity of my specialty of cardiac surgeon in order to take care of the patient and news of this kind of caring for the patients. What is a cardiac surgeon? A cardiac surgeon is a cardiologist with a knife. So it's, again, a trauma, a sophisticated trauma to operate on a patient. A sophisticated, yes, but a trauma. And again, I think now the new generation of surgeon and cardiac surgeon have to take care about the patient and develop a new consideration and a new relationship with the patient as a patient like a partner. And for the operation, I think I have to be a kind of coach, and I have to have a lot of exchange with my patient. And because cardiac surgery is a kind of trauma, I think we have to prepare the patient to the operation. Like you have to prepare a sportsman to the operation. The new concept is not to say to the patient, you leave your home and you go directly to the operating room. No, you have a disease and you have to be prepared to be operate on of your heart. So there is a lot of innovation in technology for cardiac surgery, robots, computing-assisted surgery, but there is, again, we need new concept of relationship with the patient around all that technology. So we can try to put in place the new concept of preparation of the patient in order to have an active rehabilitation after the operation. So now, because or thanks to the technology, it's possible in your home, at home, to prepare the patient with some very subtle exercise before the operation, respiration exercise, cardiac exercise, in order to have a better results during the intensive care unit and the hospitalization after the operation. So I think it's the topic for this afternoon. For my opinion, in my case of cardiac surgeon, and I will be very happy to discuss with the panel and with you, everybody, about the different questions that we can have in that topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this short but very straightforward introduction. With no further ado, I'll pass to our next speaker, Magdalena Dacord. She's online with us today. She's the Chief Executive of FH Europe. Magdalena, the floor is yours. As I said to the other, you have about 5-6 minutes to just introduce us to what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you, even though I am joining online. And just on the contrary to the previous speaker, we represent a patient community and as well citizen or people living with inherited lipid conditions. And among them, the most common genetic CVD risk factors like familial hypercholesterolemia, its rare and severe form, as well as elevated Lp(a). FH Europe is a network of patient organizations across wider Europe. We have 32 organizations in 28 countries, but progressively we are as well including individuals who want to be part of a, what I would say, movement towards changing how we talk about cardiovascular diseases and patients towards cardiovascular health and citizens. We do collaborate with societies like the European Atherosclerosis Society and the Global Registry, as well as other policy making and advocacy organizations like the World Heart Federation and newly formed European Alliance for Cardiovascular Health. So as you can already hear, there's a lot around health, around promotion and prevention, so that we can really find ways that nobody with an inherited CVD risk factors becomes a CVD patient. I actually don't need all the 5 minutes to introduce our community, but I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the first panel and really very articulated people, especially patient advocates, and I hope that I will be able to build on some of those empowering and encouraging statements in this panel. Thank you once again for having us.
Thank you very much. So you're all following the time. This is good. This does not happen all the time in most of the panels, so I'm very happy. Laurence Conta-Arasus, you're the General Manager for the FBFA zone. I'm sure you're going to tell us where that is, but I would say Europe, Africa, most likely, at G Healthcare. So we heard a doctor, we heard a patient, and now we hear a company. So what do you do, and what can you tell us about it?
Thank you. So first, good afternoon to all of you. It's really an honor to be with you because, yes, I am a company, I will say a representative, General Electric Healthcare, but first I am a health woman. I'm working in medical device for more than 30 years, and when I was 16, you will never believe, but I wanted to be surgeon in Africa. So certainly a reason why Jean-Philippe is someone that I know for a long time, and he was, I think, suggested my name to be present with you. And it's an honor because when every day I wake up, I really think to the patients, because why I do this job is not to do money, is not to, we say, do some PowerPoint or to work with Excel, but it's to really bring innovation to the patient. And it was, I will say, all my life, from my first day after school until now, and I'm sure it will be the case until the end. So General Electric Healthcare, I am working for this company for now more than 2.5 years. It's a company, of course, it's a US company, and certainly you know GE, but few people know General Electric Healthcare. We are, of course, selling some and producing some equipment like CT, like MRI, like ultrasound, like ventilators that we were using a lot during the COVID period, or anesthesia. So it's from small, medium, and really big, I would say, equipment, even go to the cyclotron. We are working in 3 main areas, so of course cardiology, but also oncology or neurology. I quite very proud to work for this company in France, because we are the biggest, in fact, medical device in France, with more than 2,800 people that serving you, patients, every day, and of course our doctors. We are an independent company now from January 1st, and with now a new mission, which is create a world where healthcare has no limit. And this no limits, it's for you, for the patients. All our employees, in fact, are working to bring innovation to hospital, to private centers, so to our doctor, to be sure, in fact, that in your everyday pathway, in fact, when you are in one of these centers, we will be able to treat you the best way, and to be sure that we could transform, in fact, this experience, what, in fact, Jean-Philippe just said at the beginning. And what can I say? It's every day. We are thinking the product when we are in research and development to be sure that we will bring some progress to, of course, to our, I will say, existing product, but also to new product, to be in capacity, in fact, to treat you with all the new materials. In cardiology specifically, so in the past, for example, we could have some stent, after we had some TAVIs, and for us, we are really building, thinking all the equipment where we will be sure to treat more patients and to bring quality, in fact, to the additional year of life, as we say. This is the reason why we are working in what we are calling the precision medicine, to be sure that we can treat, I will say, the good patient at the good moment in the good place. And it's, I will say, a chance to work in this company because we are clearly in between you, the patients, and the doctors. And as I am working for a long time in this environment, I was working and I was certainly one of the first person in France to say we need to work with patient association, in fact. A long time ago in France was very difficult to bring, for example, defibrillators in France when I was working for my previous company. And I was one of these persons who fight to have the reimbursement for these defibrillators, and we obtained in France after quite a lot of country after, so more than 12 years ago, and it was due to patient association that we succeed to bring this product to, I will say, all the patients who need this product. So I think I will be very happy to exchange on this topic, this cardiology. I passed more than 25 years directly in cardiology. It's like a passion for me, and I really like, of course, this environment, and it's a pleasure to continue the discussion after.
Thank you very much, Laurence. So with no further ado, I'll pass to the next. So Elie, you're Elie Lobel, you're the next speaker. You're the CEO of RDS, Rhythm Diagnostic Systems. So you're going to demonstrate some things to us now.
So yeah, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you this afternoon and to share with you what we are doing at RDS. So I'm Elie Lobel. I'm an engineer and a medical doctor, and I am the manager of RDS, which is a young startup company based in Strasbourg. We are inside the hospital in Strasbourg, in close contact with the patients and with the healthcare professionals. And we are developing a very special solution, a miniaturized solution for remote monitoring of cardiac and respiratory parameters of patients. And the issue we are trying to take care of is to improve the management of patients after surgery, especially after major surgeries. And what is the problem with major surgeries? The problem is that there is a risk, particularly in the first week after the surgery, of complications. You have approximately 15 to 16% of patients who are undergoing an elective major surgery who will have a complication in the first week after the surgery. So what happens is that because of that, surgeons prefer to keep the patient in the hospital after the surgery to monitor them, and the patients will stay several days, usually a week, after the surgery in the hospital. And we think this is not an optimal solution. It's not so good for the patient to stay in the hospital so long. There are various risks of nosocomial infections. Patients don't sleep well in the hospital. You don't eat well in the hospital. You are not very active in the hospital. So it's better if you can leave the hospital sooner. The problem is, how can you be monitored for your cardiac and respiratory key parameters outside of the hospital? So this is where we are bringing a solution, because in the hospital, this is done with these big monitoring devices, which usually weight like 12 kilos, 15 kilos. And so we have developed a very miniaturized solution. So I can show it if you allow me. So it's based on this very miniaturized patch, which is an electronic marvel. Actually, it's full of miniaturized electronics with 5 sensors. And you just put this small device on the back of the patient. So very simple to install. And then, thanks to that, it's connected. It is sending the data to a secured cloud where the data is analyzed continuously. So thanks to this small device, it's possible to monitor the key cardiac and respiratory parameters of the patient outside of the hospital, as if the patient were still in the hospital. So this is really interesting because this is opening new options for clinicians on how to take care of these patients after surgery. And the idea is to make it easier for surgeons to decide that patients can go back home earlier and be monitored with the medical team of the hospital, thanks to this device, continuously for several days. So, of course, this is a solution which is thought to be very simple to install by the clinical team in the hospital before the patient is going to go back home, but also something which is very important. It has to be well accepted by the patients when they are home, because, of course, they will be wearing this device. So we have been very careful about trying to make sure that this is very simple and comfortable for the patient. And the nice thing about it is that you have to trust me, I have worn it several times, but you really forget it because it's so small, it's flexible. You keep it when you sleep, you keep it under the shower, so you keep it all day long for a week, and you really forget it, and you can sleep with it. It doesn't prevent you, it's not bothering. And I think this is something very important because it has to be simple, it has to be comfortable, all the more as that the patients which are going to use this device can be patients which can be patients of major surgeries, so very often patients who are 60, 70, 80 years old. So, you know, we don't expect them to have to press any button or do anything complicated. They have to concentrate on recovery after surgery, which is, you know, something, it's a major event. It's a traumatic event. I think this is what you mentioned. A surgery is a very traumatic event. So you need to be able to concentrate on your well-being, on your recovery, on getting more activity. And so this is really the idea that we are pursuing with this solution.
Super. Thank you very much, and just on time too. Next to speak is Céline Devigne. You're the patient-centered outcome specialist at MAPI Research Trust. So let us know, and you have some presentation for us.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a very great opportunity for me to talk about patient-centered outcome. I've been working for MAPI Research Trust for 8 years now. I will briefly present the missions and the service of MAPI at the end of this speech, but first I wanted to present one way, or to introduce one way to better take care of patients. At MRT, we think that one way to take care of patient is to get the patient experience heard, valued, assessed, and on what matters for the patients. And my speech will be around why it's important and how we can assess patient experience. So when you assess patient experience, the first, and it has been already presented by my co-speakers there, that it really improves patient and clinician communication. The patient better understand their disease, and the decision-making process is also better shared between the patient and the clinician. It's also an occasion to monitor treatment or monitor the clinical practice, and also to provide some adjustment on the treatment itself or on the clinical practice. It's a kind of real-time tracking of treatment effect or practice. And the last point, but not the least, is what we call patient activation. I'm pretty sure that you all know what it means, but it's when the patients can advocate for themselves. They know their disease. They know how to take care of themselves. And when you reach this point, the patient feel more motivated. We were talking just before me, I was talking about the burden of long-term, how to avoid this feeling of being overwhelmed by the disease. So I think as soon as you assess this experience, you can try to maintain the patient motivation high, and then it can lead to patient empowerment of their own healthcare. So how can we turn this patient experience into meaningful and comparable data, because it's what we want, how we can turn subjectivity into data that can literally trigger change and can be shared at the European Commission, for example. So one of the possibilities to use what we call patient-reported outcome measures, maybe some of you know that, but it's questionnaires, it's subjective report of patient health status. And second part, very important, coming directly from the patient without any intervention of assessment of a clinician or someone else. It can lead to two types of assessments. We already talked of this, so assessment of the treatment or an intervention like the surgery, efficacy. It could be like physical, the ability of walking after surgery, physical functioning, emotional functioning, we're talking about mental health, emotional functioning, social functioning, my ability to work after a certain intervention. The other aspect that now it's more and more important is to assess the quality of care. So the concepts are a bit different. We're talking about long-term efficacy, so treatment burden, treatment adherence, could be communication with healthcare professionals. So those measures, those questionnaires, are usually administered in the clinical settings. We know that there are barriers of using such questionnaires. That's why it's so important to select the appropriate questionnaires, because there are so many out there. So there is a very first important step is to select the appropriate questionnaires. And this questionnaire, these prompts, has to be easy first to administer. Easy to score. As soon as you get a score, you can have an interpretation, meaning like a diagnosis quite quickly. This questionnaire needs to be accepted by both the clinician and the patient and not interrupt the clinical workflow. I think this is also a major criteria as well. Over the year, we have seen that now the questionnaire not only administered at the hospital, but also at home. There are many advantages of that, but I will just highlight two of them. The first one is these prompts, when they are completed at home, they allow better health equity, because you can reach a more diverse group of patients, and you can reach vulnerable people that are not always allowed to travel, or they just can't travel to hospital. And the second aspect is also the assessment of stigmatized symptoms, like we were talking about mental health, but also sexuality, also other aspects that the patient, they are not really keen on sharing with the clinician for many reasons. And here, I think the support of technology could really help to promote the use of these questionnaires and therefore help the follow-up of a better care for patients. And for our field, what it means, technology, it's meant to turn the old-fashioned paper questionnaire into electronic versions, right? And we all know that there is an endless list of benefit of that. So here I just listed some of them, which is like increase the completion rate, decrease the data entry error, less burden for the patient. So we were talking about traveling. They do not need to travel to get their questionnaire administered. Someone in the round table 1 mentioned the gamification, which is a way to administer questionnaire in a more funny, interactive way. So this way we are collecting more data. And it also allows to have some prompts alerts, like if there is some scores that could be too high, then it's connected to the clinician, and then you can alert the clinician on a special status. There are also obviously some consideration linked to the tech, so data security, the access to technology and literacy, the usability of device, and also to make sure the equivalence between the paper and the electronic version. So in all of that, our non-profit organization has the mission to facilitate the access of such questionnaires, and with a broad range of service. The first one, very important one, is to develop or to identify the appropriate questionnaires for the specific condition of use, to distribute some questionnaires, to translate them, and also to convert them into electronic version. So I will be happy really to discuss this amazing tool. I think that really could help in patient healthcare.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Vincent Poher, CEO of Avalon, part of Biocynics Group. Tell us.
So first, thank you very much to be here today. So as you said, I'm the CEO of a French company called Avalon that is based in Grenoble, and that is part of the Biocynics Group, which is also a French company based in Strasbourg. Basically, my company developed a portable and connected mini lab, which is called LabPad, which is a point-of-care device that has something unique. It can do coagulation assays and immunoassays on the same device. So you just need one assay, a range of small microcuvette, and a very small blood sample from a finger prick, for instance. So the assays that are available on this device are INR to monitor people on warfarin, CRP to measure inflammation status of the patient, and D-dimer, which is a test to exclude deep vein thrombosis and embolism in general. And other tests are under development. So it's a very nice, very easy to use device. But from day one in my company, we really focused on patient pathway because the idea is to change people's life, and how do you change people's life is not through a technology or a new point-of-care device, is really to bring the right tests at the right time together with the right healthcare professionals. So we really need to work on a country-by-country basis because patient pathways are completely different from one country to the other. And then we need to gather everybody around the patient in order to bring the right solution. So as a very concrete example, we've done something quite unique in France where we got a reimbursement to monitor people on warfarin. And you have to know that France is not a very good country for point of care because the patient pathway for biology is really based on biological labs. Okay, so we worked together with the biologist, and we decided to help them to structure the patient pathway in the primary care. So they buy our machine, they do all the qualification and so on. So they are sure 100% it gives a good result. That's a quality insurance, let's say. And then they equip other healthcare professionals like nurses to go to the patient to perform the measurement. So, for instance, a nurse can go to the patient home to perform the measurement and to take care about hemorrhage risk, for instance. They can go to nursing homes. It works very well also in dialysis centers, and basically by doing so, we can combine both quality and very easy way, very smooth patient pathway. And the idea was really to, for all these healthcare professionals collaborating together, to go to the patient. So either physically to sample the patient, or digitally as a remote expert, if there is something to be, if there is an expertise to be brought at the point of care. So right now we are monitoring 1,500 patients. It's a big experiment in France, and we are working towards trying to change a bit the French system. So that's just for INR, but it can apply to many different biomarkers. And every time we really need to have a holistic view of patient pathway and to say what is best, trying not to break what is working, but just to bring something new and to bring easier patient pathway for a better outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the six of you for really keeping up the time so we can have a very nice discussion. So I have plenty of questions, but now I'm going to surprise you a little bit. No, because if not, it's not prepared. I didn't share.
You're going to dance?
Yeah, maybe. So my first question would be, because you mentioned patient pathway, and I think patient engagement in the last few years has really improved, and I hope Madeleine will agree on that. It improved, at least it's part of the political journey. It's there. That doesn't mean that it is implemented right away. But I would like to know, because we have everybody, let's say, in the pathway or in the value chain around the table. So I would like to ask you, how do you see the engagement of patient? What is missing, or what would you be wishing for, let's say, in cardiology in particular? Maybe I can start with you, doctor. What do we need to engage better the patient?
I think it's a question of education, and the problem is not to discover your body when you are a patient, but you have to discover your body when you are a student. And the problem all over the world is that you have a big engineer that they know how to calculate everything, to financial everything, but they don't know where there is their, I don't know, excuse me, the liver, or your liver, is it in right, is it in left? Do you know where is some other organs, you know? And sometimes, quickly, you're in the front of a doctors. We try to do a very big lessons of physiology, pathology, and mental risk. So the first thing is to restart the machine and try to start at school. And first, you have to know what is a body, and what will be very interesting, what is your body and how it's functioning. And after, we can try to redo the world. But now, I think the first time is here. And probably it's really possible, like some emission like that, to discuss about that and sensibilize the politicians to that and the educationer to that. I think it's very important.
Thank you. Laurence, what do you want to say?
So first, I fully agree with you. Second point, I will take the company point. Most of the time, a lot of people is asking me, are you not afraid to speak due to the fact that you are working for a company, for industrial, and are you sure that you can? Because you are not a doctor, you are not a patient. I think we are all health actors. And I'm really convinced for the beginning that we have all a part to do in our pathway in our life. I was working a lot on prompts in my past life, and I'm also really convinced that it's a tool that we need. So to come back on the point of Jean-François, we need to be sure that, of course, we have a strong patient association, and there is a lot, and I know that a lot of people are hearing us, but not only, in fact. To be convinced that to be a patient, we are responsible, and we need to be aware of all, I will say, the ecosystem. Also, I will say from the equipment side, medical side, pharma side, and really try to understand and to be part of this ecosystem, and not to consider that we can work alone in the patient association, but that we need to work together. And I think this is the reason why I think we are all representing here. Because health was not really in the center of our, I would say, politics ecosystem, and it's not only the case, in fact, in France, but all around the world. And at the beginning, you were asking me what is the VFA, so this is France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and all the countries of Africa who are speaking French. And I see the same thing everywhere, in every country, in fact. So we really need to be sure that we are working together. We need patients, for example, when we are building our innovation. So include also patients from the beginning for the first idea, and not leave the engineer to work alone or to work only for the doctors, but really also work with the company. When we are making, for example, equipment and we are thinking innovation, if I take an example, we will think, for example, in some specific equipment, how we can be sure that we will reduce, for example, the radiation, which is absolutely key on the long terms. So of course, when we are treating patients, it's very important for a doctor to treat more patients, but we also need to be sure that we will have this security point, for example. So the 2 points that you name, but also the security. So it's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's very interesting. At least, Magdalena, I will keep you last because it's a very patient-related question. So if you don't mind, I'll go around and then you can close on that question. Great. Céline, what do you want to say? Because I'm sorry, I have to make the comment. From what you presented, I have, my only question is, okay, and how is the patient informed of the outcome of this? How do we engage the patient also in the research and so they see the results?
Yeah, thank you for the question, because I think it's a critical point that where technology can help, because the more you ask the patient to be involved, the better you have also to share back the data to keep the engagement alive. So it's also an important question, how we share the data back to the patient, in which way to have very visualization tool, data that are easy to understand, that are true, that are really reflecting their outcomes. And this is really where technology can help. And there are many works that is done on, we're talking about gamification and just tools that really help to synthesize the data. And this is the hot topic today, I would say, in the electronic version of questionnaires. Mm-hmm. It's really beyond just developing electronic questionnaire. It's more how you report the data, how you share it with the patient. And it means that if you share it with the patient, it means that you value the fact that these data should be shared with the patient and not only with the doctor, because usually the data just go back to the doctor, then you talk with your doctor, and that's all. Here, the patient is really part of the loop. So I think it's really important to work on the deliverable, but also just the fact to involve the patient in the sharing of the data. It helps with the transparency, and maybe also it will regain the trust of all the stakeholders, including the pharma company that was mentioned at the roundtable 1 as well. I think it also helped to have transparency on the data sharing.
Thank you very much. Vincent, your take.
So my background is I am an engineer, but I would say technology is just a means for an end. Mm-hmm. What is really missing to me is somebody who is actually coordinating the patient pathway, who is actually coordinating the patient pathway. And there is a big inequality is whether you've got a doctor in your family or not right now. I'm from a family where there are plenty of doctors, and so it's very easy to have somebody at your side saying you should go and see this person, this doctor, and not this person. This guy is not worth anything, which is something usually that nobody says. But really, there are good doctors, and there are no, and who is making sure, for instance, that your patient pathway is smooth, you get the result in time, and that as a patient you're going to the next step. And basically, we will find many, many technological bits around that can help for every stage, but the big missing bit is the patient pathway coordinator to me.
Okay, thank you very much. Ellie.
So thank you for this question, because this is for us really a major concern, considering the fact that this is a solution to help patients go back home after a major surgery. So the remote monitoring solution is installed at the hospital before the patient is going to go back home, but then the patient is going back home with the solution, and there is no doctor, no nurse at the side of the patient to make sure everything is okay. So we have to make sure that the solution is working very simply, very intuitively, and that it's very comfortable for the patient. And so we are paying a lot of attention in making sure that the solution is simple. And what we are doing with the solution is we are providing patient relationship management, which is a call center, which is calling the patient when the patient is going back home to make sure the patient has understood how this is working. Because we also know that the nurse who has installed this solution to the patient before in the hospital was supposed to explain, but we also know that she doesn't really have the time. She has many other things to do. So we are making sure and calling the patient when the patient is going back home to explain again the simple rules of how to use this device. And just to give you an example, the patient can keep it all time on him or her. It's also when taking a shower. Yeah. So we have to explain to the patient that if the patient is taking a shower, then you don't have to remove it. You can keep it. And then there is another rule. You can put it under the shower, but you cannot take a bath with it because it has to stay in the open air. So we explain all this very precisely. And also the second thing which is important is at the end of the week of monitoring, we call again the patient to tell the patient, okay, now everything is okay, you can remove the device, so the patient can do it with some help at home. And then to put it back in the box, because this box then is sent back to us, and we clean it, we refurbish it, and it can be used later on for another patient. So, and what's very interesting is in all the clinical trials we have run, we are always asking the patient the same question, which is, if in the future you would have to go to the hospital again and you would be offered the possibility of going back home earlier with this solution, would you accept or would you refuse? And 95% of patients say they would accept.
Very good. So, patient association is on board. Magdalena, what do you think? Let us know.
My goodness, I think that the time I saved during introduction, I will double now in trying to contribute from our perspective. First and foremost, I would like to thank all the others who have contributed. I think there were a lot of points, so I will just reiterate or reinforce some of the points made by Celine, for example. A great point on data sharing with patients, back to patient, because that really creates trust and is an evidence that their contribution has been taken on board and implemented. That's sort of quickly to build on this. And I really like this reference to technology as a means to an end. It can probably help overcome some of the logistical barriers in reaching out to a lot more people at their time preference in their safe space. But I would like to maybe articulate some of the fundamental points. So from the perspective of FH Europe as an umbrella patient organization, but also learning from other peers in the area, I think we need to start from the fundamental point. Nobody, but nobody, unless something new is out there and I don't know about it, chooses or wants to be a patient in the first place. And that's already a starting point where our engagement becomes difficult because, and I probably can say I used to work for pharma, I used to work for regulators. So it is in our daily job description. We want to do something for patient or engage patient. We've been educated, we were given the means. An individual didn't choose or didn't want to. So that's to start with. So their level of health literacy is far different very often than everyone else in the ecosystem. And there's the health literacy as me personally as an individual and my health versus the bigger scope of how health and health delivery, healthcare functions. So there's already your first inequality and a barrier to engage patient in the discussion and contributions. And now, over the past years, I've been trying to engage our community, and I would like to just maybe remind everyone that we talk about people who have genetic predisposition, genetic inherited lipid conditions. So there's already, to start off, a huge level of discrimination and stigma and misunderstanding. Now, we talk about disease that's invisible, and it's not necessarily disabilitating like other conditions. So that means that your engagement is different because maybe you don't see it, you don't necessarily suffer from it on a day-to-day basis up until something really terrible happens. So in order to engage someone, especially in cardiovascular diseases, you need to, in my opinion, demonstrate evidence that their voice and contribution matters. It's not enough to engage someone and ask them to contribute and say, hey, what do you think? It's actually actioning the suggestions that demonstrate evidence and the success. And again, it's easier to engage people when there is success. Yes, we have changed the policy. Yes, we have affected the clinical trial design so it's more patient-friendly. Yes, you have heard us when your device is actually able to carry in the shower or in your pocket and nobody sees it and discriminates against you because it's easy to pick up that something is a little bit off with you. And then change the perception of the patient. The moment you have the label patient, you already start from a different point. We've discussed that. But we are talking about the pharma or medtech industry. And very often, ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest and transparent, it was a prerequisite to engage patient in terms of better development, reimbursement, access, and so on and so forth. But there is one very important stakeholder that we kind of mention, but maybe not sufficiently enough. And that is your healthcare professionals, your doctors. Whenever we go to congresses, we very often hear, you know, patient this, patient that, but they are not involved in guidelines development, consensus papers. So their voice is already being missed, not to say dismissed. And so I think we need to as well work a little bit as a community to reestablish or establish patient perception as an expert within that community and value the input from patients. And then once we have them committed, and I'm just about to finish, is to say that they operate in a safe space. Safe space is everything from the time, the language, the respect. So no longer the tick box exercise, but reflecting on that those people have lives. Very often they different age. It's, you know, we use this term patient, but there can be a female, a male, older, younger, pediatric. We need to employ different tools. Just like in marketing and sales, we have targeting different groups. We need to do the same here. Age, sex, time availability, level of interest, and help. Probably this will be my last point here. Individual patients can contribute on their personal individual experience. Yeah. However, we need to empower patient umbrella organizations and patient communities to help leverage a collective voice sometimes. It's important to have individual voice, but it's also important to recognize the collective voice of a group of patient experts. So I've jotted plenty of bullet points, but I think I could speak almost for an hour, so I will give you the voice back, Celine.
Thank you very much. And you know, we're all in front of you listening because of the studio, so we're all very quiet. That's why I did not want to interrupt. But you're right, we have limited time, so I wanted to go for just a second round of questions. Then please, if you're online, you have specific questions, send them now, so we can have a little bit at the end to ask those questions. My second point would be, maybe I can start the other way around, but about technology, because we're in health tech for patients. So I just wanted to make sure, for me, patient first. So we started with this question. Second is, okay, there's all this buzz. I'm not saying anything new about AI, about ChatGPT. Are we going to solve the world with just, you know, putting a few things? I'm really interested. We have virtual reality. There are many things happening, obviously, technologically speaking. But I would like to know, where do you see the advances in this concrete field of cardiology? Do you see really a big change? Do you think, so what is coming up for those people listening to us? Also, I think it can be interesting, and you're all from your different viewpoints. I know it's a very broad question. We could be talking all afternoon, but maybe try your thoughts about what's coming up. So Eli, I will come to you first.
So I think, you know, we are a technology company, and we have to be very humble, because what we are trying to do is to provide adapted solutions to clinical problems, real-world problems, patients' problems, healthcare professional problems, and of course we are trying to do that with state-of-the-art technology, if it makes sense. And as you were saying, it's a tool towards improving the patient's pathway. In our case, what I would say, which is really something important, is trying to make the move towards so to speak, less hospitals. So, you know, really keep the patient in hospital as little as possible, and keep the hospital where it's absolutely needed, where, you know, you need to do some very sophisticated surgeries, or very sophisticated pathways that really need a lot of expertise, and maybe also a lot of technologies to support this expertise, but try to make it as short as possible. And from that perspective, I would say, and this is something, this is just a story, when we created the company RDS, we created it in February 2020, so it means like 3 weeks before, you know, the world shut down. So I was like, wow, that's
perfect moment.
That's not a very good timing, you know. And actually it was the other way around, because of all this COVID, people had to suddenly really rethink the way things were happening, and suddenly people realized that you know, some patients need surgery, and even during the COVID time, but then you were trying to keep them as little as possible in the hospital, because you were afraid they would get COVID in the hospital, even if they're coming for other health issues. So suddenly people started to think other ways, and there was a real interest for, I would say, telemedicine in general. Whether it's teleconsultation or remote patient monitoring in our case. So for our case, we drew a lot of attention during that time. So it was good for us, because you know, we had a lot of support, financial support, to develop the solution. But I think in the end, even of course, if this was a very difficult time, I think it helped us learn some lessons. And now we are trying to implement these lessons in the real environment of the hospital and the patient's pathways.
Super, thank you very much.
So I'm more into biology, so which is quite important though, because biological measurements are involved in something like 70% of the care of the patient, which is very important for patient pathways. And in biology, you've got new biomarkers coming up, and you've got new systems that are more and more sensitive. This is how, for instance, you can measure very little amount of troponin when you do a heart attack, for instance, and now all the protocols and patient pathway are evolving with new technologies as well. But at the same time, they are very, very old biomarkers, but the way you measure these biomarkers can completely change people's life. For instance, in diabetes, the continuous monitoring of glucose, for instance, even with a feedback loop with an artificial intelligence to inject the right amount of drug, is absolutely breakthrough, and it changes people's life very concretely. So that can actually happen in biology in different field. And there is a lot of technological development to be taken. Really.
Thank you, Celine.
I think I will just have a quick point on patient burden. I think it's very important we can see that patients have to deal on a daily basis with their disease, with their treatment. Now they are going to complete questionnaires, maybe 3 times a day. Okay, wow. Technology can help to have a better experience, to get better outcome, more accurate outcome. But we need to keep in mind the patient and to make as much as possible effort to lower the burden, because otherwise we can just go on the other side, say, oh, that's amazing, we have so many questionnaire, electronic version, that's great, but okay, does it really provide a better way to support the care, or does it increase the burden of the patient? Because now we can see also digital health technology where they are going to wear a watch to measure different things, then they go to hospital, then they complete questionnaires, and in the end they are doing many things to get outcomes. So I think technology can definitely support, as soon as the main objective is really to measure what we intend to measure, what matters to patient, and that we do not increase the burden.
Thank you very much. Laurence.
I think a little bit of all of this. For me, it will be, don't be afraid by the future. We are living in a very difficult world, and COVID was, I think, a very difficult situation for all of us. For us, officially, I will say, we are selling equipment, but it's far away, in fact. It's also all this data, in fact, that we have from all our technology, but for all the information that we could have for the patient, all the information that we could have from the doctors. So it's how altogether we can be sure that we will really reinvent all this pathway from the beginning. So also the food, for example, we could have someone, I think, who could speak about how we are eating, what we are eating, and in the end, how we follow who we are, our disease. And personally, I'm very optimistic by life, and I think we are speaking a lot about technology, but it's more on innovation. And innovation could be in technology, how we are organized, how we are eating, but this is in our hand, in fact. We can say the world where we are is crazy, or we can say all together we will change, we will transform what we need to have a better future. So it will be perhaps my message.
Thank you very much. Very positive one. Please.
Yes. So I try to be positive too.
Yes, now you have the pressure.
and I'm sure that it's the way to be positive. The question is just how to keep medical humanity in the future medicine. And of course, we have to work together around that, because the engineer put humanity, the biologists put humanity, the doctors, the company put humanity. I think there is a new worker around. You say in France we speak a lot about the end of life and the new work around the assistance and the new worker of assistance for the end of life. But here we are just in a short sequence in our life where we are patient, because we will be patient. And during that only very small sequence, we have to keep humanity. And I understand the patient and the association of the patient. The work of the doctors is to understand the evolution and the disruption of the evolution, because we have evolution, but the disruption is that we don't have any evaluation. And the problem of our generation is that we have evolution without evaluation. And humanity is probably the short times, and it's the union between and during the rupture. If we don't have time to explain why it's evolving really rapidly, we need to have, and we have to have time to say, okay, we try to explain you why, because it's really evaluate really rapidly. And that time is humanity. When the doctor don't understand what is the new treatment, he have to keep time to say, okay, I try to explain you, and we will take, during that time, in January, evolve, okay? And after we can take another step and continue. So again, the doctor have to understand the evolution and have to keep humanity, medical humanity.
Thank you very much. Magdalena, do you want to add on the technology take?
Absolutely, yes. And it's a complex question and far more complex answers. And again, I really like when the panelists mention the responsible use of technology and making it human and evaluating. So it needs to serve a specific purpose. It needs to be there to make things easier, better, without obstructing. Ultimately, again, nobody wants to be a patient, nobody chooses to be patient, and they want to continue with their life as best as they can. But I also appreciate the intervention made that it's not just technology, it's the innovation, and innovation in sometimes in the way we think and the way we act, the way we collaborate. Sometimes it's not developing yet another tool, yet another app, yet another medication, but making sure that what we have in place is well implemented, evaluated. So from bench to bed and back to bench, I think that this for me is extremely important. Few examples where we see in inherited lipids and genetic dyslipidemias, the use of technology which advances our mission is the implementation of electronic health records and reading and detecting people who were missed in the process in the system. That's really fantastic. If we can fix the mistakes that human eye or human processes have missed out on, this is already great. And a lot of countries, interestingly enough, those sort of very often forgotten smaller Central and Eastern European countries are paving the way. So I wanted to maybe focus here and pay tribute to countries and places and communities that very often are under-recognized in advancing the use of technology and advancing technology in a responsible, humane, and evaluated fashion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we're getting to the end more or less of the panel because we have 8 minutes left. So if I don't see any question online, I think what the audience is completely captivated with you, because it's very interesting to hear every point of view, and I think this is the pathway or the value chain we're talking about, that everybody's really convinced. So I would like to ask you, just in conclusion, to really think where this is going. Because the title of the session is Cardiac Disease for a Better Care of Patients. So we've talked patients engagement, we talked technology. I know we could talk all afternoon long, and I would love that. But where do you see that things are going? Because you mentioned education, we mentioned pathway, we mentioned a good use of technology or responsible one. What is your take? Where do you think things are going? Because one of the key concerns, and I think we discussed this with the organization too today, is that there's a lot of talk in other, let's say, diseases. We had COVID, so infectious disease became the thing. Rare disease, fortunately, are becoming quite important, but it seems like non-communicable diseases, and sometimes cardiac one, well, it will come, you know? We don't really think about it, and the day comes, sometimes, as you said before, it's a little late, and then you realize you have to understand how your body works. So how can we convince people to, you know, be more aware of what's going on, and where do you see, I mean, I know it's a broad question, but just your last take on the conversation of today. So 1-2 minutes, do you want to start? Doctor?
Okay, thank you.
Doctor? I mean, you're the one dealing with patients every day, so I would like to know.
I understand. I think if I have to conclude for my specialty and the others too, the patient have to be a partner. And if the patient is a partner, you have to live with him as a partner. So how he feels, what is his real question, and what the problem of the organ in that way, the heart, is in that body and in that human person. And if all the technology give me the tools, for me, doctors, to know rapidly and in confidence with, again, it's easy, but it is humanity, it's really simple in a visit to understand what is that person that I have in the front, and how in 20 or 1/2 an hour I'm able to transform the relationship between a patient and a doctor in 2 partners. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Your take in a minute.
Yes. So I will follow the same idea. Yes, the patient need to be a partner, but in terms of management, we always say if you want to help people, you need to know you and to be in a good position to do it. There is a small film which named Lucille that we have made in our company, and this is a patient, and in the morning he has all the information, in fact, like when you are brushing your teeth, you can see how you are, if you have a concern. So if it's the case, you can have a quick appointment with your doctors. So perhaps to be your own partner. So to really be in a position where, in fact, as we said, before becoming a patient, just to have a conscious that you will be a patient. So really be in a position, in fact, in the future, to have all this data, and that these data are your own data and not the data of the doctors or not the data of the different company, and be in a position to really be an actor who will take this health in our hand, in fact, in the hand of the patient. And like this, if I took the last idea that we have, it will be certainly easier to face all the transformation that we need to have. So understand why we will have a new technology, why this pathway is working like this, what we can do differently, how we can act differently, and exchange, I will say, with all the communities.
Thank you very much. Your take? 1 minute.
Yeah. I think we all agree here that it's the time where we are just healing, curing symptoms is over. Now the holistic approach of patient is now, let's say, the center of the practice, or we'll hope and fight for that. And I think the end of this discussion, I would like to enlarge this vision to the environment of the patient, and also by considering the caregiver. I think it's also important to have a look of the caregiver, because we can see now that the caregiver will be the future patient, because of the fact that caring for someone could have so much impact on your health, mental health, physical health. And I think it's also important at some point to discuss this, this part of the partnership. There's the patient, the clinician, and also at some point maybe the caregiver. And I think it's important to involve them also at some point.
Thank you very much. Vincent.
If you ask us where we are going, I think all of us, we are going to the same place at the end. And this should never be forgotten, because it's at the heart of humanity, I think, basically. And in my company, the motto is we are all patients, so that employees every day remember why they are getting up. They are getting up to serve their grandmother, their relatives, themselves, and the patient at the end. And we really need a very strong purpose that is really linked to this humanity, because innovation can be technical, it can be social, it can be whatever. We are very creative, human beings, but we should never forget that the patient is at the center, and we're here to serve the patient, I believe.
Thank you very much. Eli, your take, and then I'll pass it to Magdalena and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, maybe one idea I would like to add is that maybe thanks to innovation, one of the important change is that it's possible to make more personalized medicine, more personalized treatment, but also more personalized prevention. And this is something very important. And I think also when you are saying more personalized, it has to adapt to the patient belief and to the patient capacity of accepting or not accepting certain things. And I think this is really something that's at the heart of what we're trying to do, to try to understand where is the limit of what some patients can accept and others would not accept. And thanks to all this technology and all the data that we are collecting when we are, for example, monitoring the patient, it's possible to provide more adaptability and so more personalization in the way the patient is taken care of.
Thank you very much. Magdalena, you're the last two. 1 minute.
There is a benefit in being the last one because I can echo quite a lot. So I echo quite a lot that has been said. And I would definitely like to emphasize the person-centered care. And I on purpose moved away from patient-centered to person-centered. And I would want to broaden this concept here is to say that what about finally pivoting and focusing on health prevention and health delivery rather than patient and disease? There is a lot of heart-related diseases that can be prevented. However, they're not. And so they take away the funds, the time, and the attention for people who really require focused health care a long time. So my call to all of us and the listeners would be, are we as a society ready to focus on innovation and technology for health and pivoting towards health? So those who have potentially those conditions that cannot be avoided or prevented get a better centered, person-centered care. That would be my take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I think that's an amazing conclusion. Thank you very much to all the panel for being here. And now I pass it back to Alison. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anais. And thank you to all of the excellent speakers on this panel. It was truly an enlightening and inspiring conversation. We will be sending out our second survey right now to get your feedback on this roundtable. And our event is already drawing to a close, so we're going to be taking a very short break, 1.5 minutes to be exact, and at 3:50 we will be having the concluding word from Christian Policar. So stay with us, see you at 3:50.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is now time for our conclusion, and to give that concluding word, I hand over to Christian Policard.
Thank you. As always, I have the job to conclude. It is a more easy one, but sometimes difficult. But this year, I think we have had more attendees, 10% more. So 400 people, close to 400 people around Europe, and even outside Europe, from US, from Israel, from UK now. UK is no more in Europe. So it's a success, because at the beginning it was less people attending. So it's the third year, as you know, and we have the same number of countries, small and large or medium-sized countries from Europe and outside Europe. So I have a difficult job to conclude. So I asked to the moderators, what could be their conclusion before they made the round table. And I am happy to see that what they said to me at the beginning has been confirmed by what has happened during the round table. In fact, and it is what we want. The conclusion is that the patient is at the center of everything, and it has to be more and more. I started my career with the pharma industry, I don't know how many times ago, 50 years ago. And at the time, I can say to you, patients were not so common, and their opinion was not really concerned and considered, when we were speaking about development of new drugs. Now I see that it is true everywhere, and it is more and more true, and it is very, very important. It has been my dream since I remember since 25 years, when I spoke with the chairman and CEO of Sanofi to try to convince him. He was convinced, but my other colleagues were less convinced, because it was very important to sell at the maximum at this time. It has changed now to sell the right thing for the right people, so for the right patient, and I think it is what has to be done, and more. So the conclusion for the roundtables have been relatively similar. The roundtable number one, the message Alain delivered to me before the roundtable was he wanted to achieve to obtain a message which was a continuum between I would say prevention and treatment, and this is very, 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 very important. The more prevention will happen before treatment, the more we'll have a patient adhering, to the medical treatment. So it's very important. It will decrease, the cost also globally. So it will help to cure more people around the world. And we have to think about developing countries also, because here we are in a developed country, as it is said, but developing countries are for me more perhaps important for patients living in those countries. The roundtable gave, when I spoke with Anaïs, she said, I want to obtain the fact that the priority is to be given to patient, and we have to start from patient to cure patients, and I think it has been said and repeated by the different speakers. It has to be involved since the beginning, since the definition of the clinical trials until the end, the way it is treated, the market access is organized. And I'm very happy to have two friends of me, the two companies, we were two young people, and because I have participated to their experiences since a few years, and to see those decentralized testing or monitoring done, I can say to you, when I was fighting about the official biologists, it was difficult to convince them that those tests will be made in other parts than their laboratories. So, again, the conclusion are that with patient, for the patient, innovation everywhere, and every sort of innovation, small innovation, large innovation, medium-sized innovation. There is not small innovation, in fact, even if they are small technically. So very, very important. And what I did not repeat is that when you look to the 400 people attending, you had association, CRO, CMO, service company, advising company, you have industry, biotech, medtech, health, foundation, media, accelerators, incubators, hospitals, clinics, academic people, you had governmental people, representative of government, you have investors. I am also an investor, you know, you need money to do other things, clusters. So it is the whole chain which will succeed, which will have to collaborate to make it happening from the patient to the patient. So it is perhaps the key message, and those innovation has to come from each part and each specialties. I have the pleasure to think, and I hope you have the same opinion, that for me this event is unique. You know, I have traveled around the world to attend to so many events in the different continents. I have never seen an event where they are more pharmaceutical, they are more scientific, they are more financial, you know, and I have been involved in all of them. It is the first time in my life I am participating to an event. I am also organizing an event with all those people contributing to the same, to cure better patients around the world. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you so much, Christian, for that very important closing word. We are at the end of our event, and we wish to thank many, many people. First of all, we would like to thank Marie-Yvonne Jans and Christian Polica and all the board members of HealthTech for Care for their initiative and their conviction about creating this unique event. We also wish to thank the European Commission, John Ryan, for his presence today online. A very quick additional word, Christian, in 10 seconds. Absolutely, you absolutely.
I concluded it is more easy, their work. You know.
Let me just get to, I'll pick up on that point in just a minute. So we also wish to thank our excellent speakers who have taken their time today to share their expertise and to enlighten us and to inspire us about not only today, but the future. Our special thanks go to our masters of the moderation today. That is Anaïs Le Corvec and, of course, Alain Herrera. Thank you so much for your expertise today in a difficult exercise. And, of course, we also wish to say a very big thank you to all of the team backstage here at the Hub Institute who have allowed this event to go ahead seamlessly. This event would not be able to happen without the tireless work behind the scenes of the organizing team at HealthTech for Care, and namely Natalie, Solène, Iman, Precious and Mohammed for all the work that they have done to make this unique event happen. And we wish to say a very, very heartfelt thanks to all the participants around the world who have been with us this afternoon for this special edition of HealthTech for Patients. And we look forward to welcoming you to our future events in the HealthTech for Care program, notably, of course, the 4th edition next year of HealthTech for Patients. Until then, we wish you a very good evening. Goodbye.